Good morning, I'm Pauline Verzosa. It is Tuesday, the 3rd of February, and we're bringing you Morning Matters because your mornings matter. The House Committee on Justice has declared both impeachment complaints against President Bongbong Marcos as sufficient in form. Lawmakers are set to decide today whether the allegations meet the critical test of substance to proceed with the trial. Still on impeachment talks, 2 new impeachment complaints against Vice President Sara Duterte were filed on Monday. Duterte's defense team meanwhile said they were not surprised by the new complaints and are prepared to address them. And House Ethics Chairman J.C. Abalos revealed a surge in complaints filed against multiple lawmakers during the recent session break. The panel is set to deliberate on pending cases, including a reopened probe into suspended Representative Kiko Barzaga during its regular meeting this week. Welcome to our program, Morning Matters, where we talk about the issues you need to know for the rest of your day. And now first on the agenda, heated exchanges, a walkout, and a crucial vote at the House Committee on Justice. 2 impeachment complaints against President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. have cleared the first hurdle and declared sufficient in form. More details in this report.
2 impeachment complaints against President Bongbong Marcos have formally moved forward at the House Committee on Justice. During the deliberations, Manila 6th District Representative Benny Abante staged a walkout. Abante argued that the 2 complaints against the president are insufficient in form.
This is actually an exercise in futility and a waste of the people's money. I therefore would like to walk out of this hearing right now.
Before the walkout, tensions also flared among lawmakers over the issue of signatures. Manila 3rd District Representative Joel Chua questioned the identities of those who signed the 2 complaints, saying they should personally confirm that the signatures were theirs. But according to ML Party List Representative Leila De Lima, such confirmation was unnecessary. Chua, however, stood his ground.
I think it's unnecessary because there is a presumption of authenticity of signatures unless someone or anyone questions it. Then it becomes an issue.
But I think that is very important. Why? Because we are talking here of the sufficiency in form. And one of the very important in the form is the signature itself.
Committee Chairperson Representative Jerva Luistro stepped in to settle the issue. She clarified that only committee members and endorsers of the complaints were invited to the hearing.
We recognize the significance of the opinion and observation of the Honorable Chua, but nevertheless, let us confine ourselves to what appear in the impeachment complaint.
Cagayan de Oro Representative Rufus Rodriguez also raised concerns over a page that was not notarized. But Kabataan Party List Representative Rene Co explained that the list of complainants could not fit on a single page, which is why the notary appeared on a separate page. In the end, the House Committee on Justice declared both impeachment complaints sufficient in form. This means all required documents are complete, signed by the complainants, verified, notarized, and accompanied by resolutions of endorsement. The first complaint, filed by Attorney Andre De Jesus and endorsed by Pusong Pinoy Party List Representative Jet Nisay, garnered 46 votes in favor, 1 against, and 1 abstention. The impeachment complaint filed by the group Bayan and endorsed by the Makabayan Bloc received 35 votes in favor, 9 against, and 1 abstention. Today, the committee will take up whether the complaints are sufficient in substance or whether the offenses cited constitute grounds to impeach President Marcos. For News 5, I'm Marian Enriquez. We are One News.
Well, meanwhile, Vice President Sara Duterte is facing fresh impeachment complaints, reviving efforts to remove her from office. Here's our report.
2 new impeachment complaints against Vice President Sara Duterte were filed on Monday before the House Secretary General's office. The first complaint was refiled by former lawmakers Franz Castro and Arlene Brosas and endorsed by the 3-member Makabayan Bloc. Similar to the complaint they filed in 2024, the lawmakers accused Vice President Duterte of misuse of public funds and bribery. They also alleged that she threatened the lives of President Bongbong Marcos, the First Lady Marcolita and his cousin, former House Speaker Martin Romualdez. The complainants further claimed that the Vice President ignored congressional inquiries.
Ang public official ay talagang kino-consider with utmost, dapat may utmost trust ang mga tao. Nakita naman natin yung wala talagang transparency and accountability. This is a tantamount to malversation, of misappropriation or misuse of public funds. Hindi siya sumasagot doon sa mga tanong sa lahat ng committee, kahit na yun sa mga budget hearings. So nag-asal pusit ang Vice President kaugnay dito.
Yung asal din po ni VP Sara Duterte, itong 2025 budget deliberations for the 2026 budget. Kung matatandaan natin, may halos boycott ng nangyayaring budget hearings. Ito po ay taliwas doon sa dapat na functions ng public official kapag sinasalang po ang budget niya sa deliberations ng Kamara.
What's new this time is the inclusion of claims by self-proclaimed Duterte bagman Ramil Madriaga, who alleged that illegal pogo and drug money were funneled into Duterte's 2022 election campaign.
Tumanggap siya ng cash mula dun sa mga security officers ni Vice President Sara Duterte. Tumutugma yung timeline niya doon sa mga narinig na natin na testimonya ng mga special disbursing officers kaugnay ng pag-withdraw ng pera at pagbibigay nito sa mga security officers.
A second impeachment complaint was filed by civil society groups, which also accused the Vice President of betrayal of public trust. It was endorsed by Mamamayang Liberal Party List Representative Laila de Lima and Akbayan Party List Representative Percy Sendanya.
Bakit po ako nag-endorse sa impeachment complaint na ito? First, because I believe in the cause or the causes of the complainants. Second, I believe na meron talaga na mga grounds, mga batayan, impeachable offenses laban o pwedeng i-prove at mapuprove during the hearings sa Committee on Justice.
This group added allegations of the Vice President's involvement in extrajudicial killings during the drug war under her father, former President Rodrigo Duterte. The filing was initially set for February 6, but the groups acted promptly after a Supreme Court ruling on January 15 lifted the one-year bar on filing impeachment complaints.
So sa totoo lang, January 16 actually, pwede na pala. Kaya lang, late naman na namin nakita yung decision the other day lang. So kung ganun pala, pwede na mag-file anytime after January 15 at ito ngayon yung pinaka-opportune moment para sa amin para i-file yon. So we're following the Supreme Court decision, we're following the Constitution and the rules. Kaya in this case, tamang-tama ang pag-file nitong complaint na ito. It is within the Supreme Court decision and after the one-year bar.
The Vice President's defense team said they were not surprised by the new complaints and are prepared to address them. In a statement, Attorney Michael Poa said a fair and impartial review will demonstrate that the accusations are devoid of both factual and legal basis. Meanwhile, in an interview with Storycon, Dr. Sylvia Claudio of Tindig Pilipinas, one of the complainants, was asked about how they see their chances of getting VP Sara impeached and convicted this time.
It really is also the appetite of Congress and the political situation now for any impeachment complaint to go forward. It really is, as everyone says, a political process. We thought we had better chances last year, honestly, kung akong tatanungin, no? I also pala need to clarify for the sake of our organizations that these were individual complainants. We took it upon ourselves to file the complaints as individuals.
And now in other news, a new Okta research survey shows shifting public sentiment toward the country's top leaders. The latest Tugon ng Masa poll saw a drop in President Bongbong Marcos's trust and performance ratings in the fourth quarter. Trust in the president fell by 9 percentage points from 57% in the third quarter to 48% in the fourth. Still, a slim majority continues to approve of his performance at 51%. And approval was highest in Balance Luzon at 58% and lowest in Mindanao at 42%. And here's what Octa Research President Ranjit Rai told Storycon about the decline in Marcos's ratings.
This is not a story of collapse. That's precisely it. Because there's a divergence between trust and performance. Your performance at more than 50%. So this can't be a story of collapse, at least as far as Octa surveys are concerned. This is a significant decline, no? And it's something that government has to address, no? By going back to what the president has promised over the last 2 or 3 quarters or over the last 3 years. And that's what I wanted to basically emphasize. This is not a collapse, no? And my sense is this divergence between trust and performance, as far as the president is concerned, is really the public becoming more critical, no? Filipinos are distinguishing more clearly between trust in leadership and assessment of performance. And that's what I wanted to emphasize. This is not a collapse, because we thought it would be a collapse by this time because you have a 9 percentage point drop in trust, but the performance held. So this could actually be a turning point also if the administration is able to push its agenda of good governance forward. If the cases against, as Ami rightly pointed out, if the cases graph cases against these people in our political members of our political elite prosper, I think it could also actually signal a turnaround.
Meanwhile, over the same period, Vice President Sara Duterte posted gains. Her trust rating rose to 53% from 51%, while her performance rating climbed to 54% from 49%. Regionally, her highest performance rating came from Mindanao at 79% and the lowest from Balance Luzon at 41%. The Octa survey was conducted from December 16 to 2025 among 1,200 adults nationwide. Well, this time back in Congress, senators are denying talks of another brewing coup in the upper chamber. However, Senate President Tito Soto acknowledged that there may be reasons why some of his colleagues are dissatisfied with his leadership, including changes in committee chairmanships. Senator Erwin Tulfo also dismissed rumors of a Senate shakeup, saying that so far no one has approached him or other senators to seek their views on the matter. Under Senate rules, at least 13 senators are required to replace the Senate president. But according to Senate Minority Leader Alan Peter Cayetano, there are currently not enough numbers to make that happen.
Usually, pag change of leadership, nagtatawag boss, dito ka na, kayo magkapatid. Usually it's like that. Pero this time talagang wala naman, tahimik. It's quiet.
It's rumors until it's there, di ba? There's always discussion. There are people with happy of our direction, may people na hindi happy sa direction.
And coming right up, Representative Terry Ridon joins us to discuss the impeachment complaint against our leaders, President Bongbong Marcos and Vice President Sara Duterte. Don't go away, Morning Matters will be back after this quick break. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. The Department of Justice has begun its preliminary investigation into the plunder cases against Senator Jinggoy Estrada and former Senator Bong Revilla linked to the flood control scandal. Both senators did not attend the hearing and only their lawyers were present. The DOJ said respondents are not required to appear at this stage. Prosecutor General Richard Anthony Fadulion added that they will need to attend only when submitting their counter affidavits. The DOJ also confirmed that an immigration lookout bulletin order has been issued for the respondents to monitor their movements.
Basta restitution, pag-usapan kagad. Kasi kung talagang willing kayo, then magsauli kayo. That's always part of the proposition. Kasi kung iintayin mo na ang korte ang magsasabi kung magkano isa sa uli, baka 20 taon na hindi pa tapos yan. Sabi ko naman sa kanila, dapat yan ang una nating isama sa usapan. Ano yan? Makikipag-usap ka, wala kang kasalanan, tapos wala kang bibigay, wala kang isa sa uli. Anong pag-uusapan natin?
And in other news, Public Works Secretary Vince Dizon called out officials of the DPWH in Samar after discovering that a bridge project under the Calbayog City Coastal Road was started without clearance from the Philippine Ports Authority. Dizon warned the bridge's low clearance could pose a danger to vessels heading to the port of Calbayog, even as the project was meant to ease traffic along the Maharlika Highway in Calbayog's business district.
So magdasal kayo na pwede pang remedyoan to o papayag ang PPA dun sa design nyo. Kasi kung hindi, may magaki kayong problema dito. So sino mananagot? Kayo ang mananagot dito.
Dizon also inspected the long-delayed Gandara Bridge, where residents say daily travel has become risky and costly, with full rehabilitation still expected to take years.
Mahirap kasi pag bumabaha, mahirap tumawid ng bangka. Minsan na isang bis ng bangka lumubog na dyan. May mga estudyante kasakay.
Sige po, Kap. Papaspasan natin.
Pag mga estudyante.
Hindi ko lang masabi pa yung timeline kasi papa-evaluate pa natin to.
And now for the latest on the weather, Pag-asa is monitoring a low-pressure area outside the Philippine Area of Responsibility. Its center was last spotted at 1,350 kilometers east of northeastern Mindanao. The Weather Bureau said the LPA has a high chance of developing into a tropical depression within the next 24 hours. Meanwhile, cloudy skies with scattered rains and thunderstorms are expected over parts of the Visayas and Mindanao due to shear line. The northeast monsoon is also affecting Luzon, including Metro Manila, bringing cloudy skies with light rains. Now don't go away, we still have more matters to discuss right after this break. Keep it here on One News. Good morning and welcome back. I'm Pauline Verzosa, and here on Morning Matters, we talk about the most pressing issues and we give you the context behind the headlines. House Committee on Ethics and Privileges Chairman J.C. Abalos said that numerous ethics complaints were filed against lawmakers during the session break. He said the complaints involved multiple members and not just a single respondent. The panel plans to review and resolve all cases during its regular meeting this week. Abalos added that ethics complaints are confidential by rule and cannot be discussed publicly unless formally brought to plenary. And joining us this morning to talk about that is House Committee on Ethics and Privileges Chairman J.C. Abalos. Good morning, Congressman, and welcome to Morning Matters.
Good morning, Pauline, as well as to all our viewers. Thank you so much for having me on our program.
All right, well, let's start first, Congressman, with the big picture. You said that several ethics complaints were filed during the session break. How many are we talking about, roughly?
Well, at the moment, Pauline, we are processing at least 4 ethics complaints, and of course, we are anticipating more. The Committee on Ethics is in correspondence with our prosecutorial bodies, such as the Office of the Ombudsman, and it's not only members of Congress who are allowed to file ethics complaints, even private citizens are allowed. So as we continue to monitor the flood control investigations, as well as the conduct of all our House members, we anticipate that we should be receiving more ethics complaints in the coming days and months.
But if we were to talk about these 4 ethics complaints that are currently lodged right now with your committee, Congressman, were they filed by your fellow lawmakers or by private citizens?
Not all of them were filed by my fellow lawmakers. Some of them were actually filed by private citizens, and some of them were cases referred by the Office of the Ombudsman.
And without naming any names, Congressman, what kind of issues are being raised in these ethics complaints? If you may share that with us.
Of course, I would like to inform our countrymen that public officials should continue to behave in a manner that is expected of them. And that's not limited to their actions and conduct in the plenary. This includes their behavior when they come home to their districts. That is why we are constantly receiving ethics complaints against some of our members, and we will deal with them in accordance with our rules.
So it's not just their conduct within plenary or in the House of Representatives, but also outside. But how do you validate, Congressman, what constitutes as an ethics violation?
Right. Well, according to our rules, the jurisdiction of the Committee on Ethics, it covers the dignity and integrity, not just of our individual members, but of the institution as a whole. And you could actually find our rules on the House of Representatives website. So as regards to our countrymen, kung meron silang complaints against lawmakers, they may file complaints in accordance with the form required under our rules.
Why do you think, Congressman, there was this surge of filing of ethics complaints during the session break?
That I don't know, but throughout my time as ethics chairperson, since the 20th Congress has begun, I made it the point that we will be dealing with all cases that will be received by us. And as a matter of fact, some of these complaints are actually defective in form. So we still give our complainants an opportunity to correct their complaints whenever we return it.
And I know that these ethics complaints are confidential by rule, but we do know already, Congressman, that the case of Representative Kiko Barzaga is back before the Ethics Committee, but he's already serving a 60-day suspension. So how will this work?
Right. There's one thing that I want to emphasize here. It was not the Committee on Ethics that summoned him for today's scheduled hearing. It was actually the entire plenary that did. Because when the Committee on Ethics gave its committee report and recommendation last December 1, it was adopted by the plenary. And as early as last week, the plenary could have already moved to discipline him further. Instead, the plenary decided that the Committee on Ethics in its next scheduled hearing should conduct an assessment whether or not the respondent indeed violated the committee report that's adopted by the plenary. So the plenary was actually very lenient by affording the respondent an opportunity to answer the allegations against him, even though they could have made a disciplinary action outright, because the Committee on Ethics had already divested its functions.
Well, what's being questioned here, or pointed out, is the social media postings, once again, of Representative Kiko Barzaga. But Congressman, does that count as violating House rules when he's already suspended or serving a suspension?
Well, at this point, at this juncture, it is too early for me to decide because we have a scheduled hearing about this later on. And we asked both the complainants and the respondents to submit their additional evidences. So later on, when we conduct our ethics proceedings, we should be able to come up with a recommendation after it's gone through our processes.
So for this particular ethics complaint of Representative Kiko Barzaga, this will be tackled today. Do you also expect to resolve it within the day, Congressman? And is Representative Barzaga required to personally appear before the committee?
Yes. If we were to take a look back at the privileged speech of our colleague last week, 3 motions were actually adopted by the House. The first motion is that the Committee on Ethics must conduct an assessment in its next scheduled hearing. The second motion that was adopted requires the respondent to appear at the scheduled hearing. And the third motion is for the Committee on Ethics to immediately report to the plenary its recommendations after the scheduled hearing. So after the scheduled hearing today, the Committee on Ethics must be prepared or ready to immediately report to the plenary its recommendations. So we should be ready by today. I don't know if we will be allowed to make a report by today or tomorrow, because that would now depend on the Committee on Rules if they would allow it to be included in the calendar of business.
And Congressman, you did touch on that privileged speech that was made by Representative Valeriano, and the plenary did refer this to your committee. But how does that work? Tell us, Congressman. Does that strengthen a complaint, or does it still go through the same evaluation process?
Right. The process here is actually quite different because, according to our rules, the Committee on Ethics acquires jurisdiction whenever there are referrals of resolutions or if there are verified and sworn complaints that are filed before us. What makes this case different from others is that it is actually a direct order from the plenary. The Committee on Ethics had already discharged its functions when it made the committee report last December 1. Therefore, any member could now raise a motion before the plenary. So as early as last week, our members could have already made a disciplinary recommendation as regards to the respondent. Instead, this was actually an act of leniency on the part of the plenary. They would like to give the respondent a chance to defend himself and to answer the allegations against him that there were violations of, that there was a repetition of a similar misconduct.
Well, you did speak about fairness also, and I wanted to ask, do you assure that Representative Barzaga will also be afforded the same fairness? Is he allowed to make his case and also present counter evidence?
Yes. Actually, when the 3 motions were adopted last week, we immediately sent notices to both the respondent and the complainant. Of course, we're expecting both the complainant and the respondent to attend today's hearing because this hearing is actually very, very important. After all, our respondent is an elected public official, and it's very important for us to answer any allegations that are filed against us through the proper processes.
And this really sends a message, Congressman, that you take conduct quite seriously, especially even if it's online, how lawmakers present themselves and conduct themselves. So if the committee finds that Representative Barzaga did violate House rules, again, what sanctions are on the table?
Well, of course, if we were to take a look at our Constitution, ultimately, the power to discipline rests with the plenary. There's been instances wherein the recommendation of the Committee on Ethics had been modified by the plenary because the Committee on Ethics is merely a recommendatory quasi-judicial body that makes recommendations to the plenary. The most severe penalty, as enshrined in our constitution, is expulsion and suspension, and it requires a two-thirds vote. Outside of that, there's been instances wherein congressmen were reprimanded or censured for their actions. And it would depend, of course, on the course of the proceedings.
Is expulsion part of the sanctions that are possible here, Congressman?
Well, any sanction is possible as regards to any lawmaker, and of course, it would depend on the gravity of the actions of the lawmaker, and of course, ultimately, it rests with the collective wisdom of the institution.
So someone would have to make a motion, tama ba, Congressman, to move to expel a certain lawmaker. Ganun po ba? Is that how it will work on the floor? Someone has to propose a sanction as grave or as extreme as expulsion, and it's not something that would emanate from the committee.
Well, of course, the committee is the recommendatory body, and depending on the course of the proceedings, the committee may opt not to discipline, or the committee may opt to discipline, whether it be a censure, a reprimand, a suspension, or an expulsion. Now, the committee report, it depends kung ito po ay i-adopt ng plenary because everything comes down to a vote, and of course, we are a collegial body.
To your knowledge, Congressman, has that ever happened before in history, in the history of the Ethics Committee? What was the most extreme violation and sanction meted out?
Right. In the 19th Congress, Congress has expelled a lawmaker. In previous Congresses, I think this was in the 8th Congress, the Congress almost expelled a lawmaker, but the lawmaker resigned prior to the adoption of the committee report. So it's not the first time that serious sanctions have been dealt to lawmakers.
Okay, so let's move on to the other ethics complaints that are being lodged against other lawmakers apart from Representative Kiko Barzaga. What else can you tell us about the nature of these complaints, Kong, no? Kasi there are also accusations involving bribery and corruption, as we all know, based on the flood control scandal. Ilan po dito yung ni-refer mula po sa ombudsman?
Actually, I can't give a number dahil marami na po. But one thing is very important. The Committee on Ethics, yung jurisdiction po namin, it covers actions during the present Congress. So, any complaint that is filed against a former lawmaker, wala na po yan sa aming jurisdiction. Of course, napakahalaga na may jurisdiction yung committee para maging valid po ang aming mga ruling.
But what if the acts were committed before the 20th Congress, but they are still members of the House in the present Congress?
Well, one important thing is that to take note of is that Congress is not a continuing body. And of course, dahil dyan, mawawalan po ng jurisdiction ang Committee on Ethics. But even though the Committee on Ethics would be deprived of its jurisdiction for actions done in prior Congresses, of course, meron pa rin po tayong mga remedies and reliefs na pwedeng mahingi through other channels. We can still file civil and criminal actions, and of course, the Committee on Ethics can still conduct its own investigations para lang masigurado natin na magkaroon tayo ng rules na hindi po maulit ang ganitong klaseng behavior.
So let's clarify that, Kong, no? So if we're talking about the flood control scandal, we know this involves the 19th Congress and even the years before that. So hindi sila pwedeng isama bilang ethics complaint. We can only talk about instances of corruption starting last year, starting July of 2025, kung meron man.
Well, one important thing to take note of here is that some of these alleged possible violations of graft and corruption are continuing violations. Naniniwala po ako na kapag mayroong conflict of interest, for example, and mayroong business interest ng isang mambabatas, may jurisdiction pa rin po ang Committee on Ethics sa ganong mga bagay. Because some of these offenses, well, it may have begun in the previous Congress, pero maaaring nagko-continue pa rin siya hanggang sa 20th Congress. That is why the Committee on Ethics remain prepared to accept any complaint that may arise from these investigations.
And Congressman, can we expect your committee to handle this decisively, knowing that you will be trying your very own colleagues at the lower house?
Well, of course, dahil ito po ay aking pinagsumpan when I took my oath of office, gagawin ko ng buong katapatan sa abot ng aking makakaya ang aking tungkulin that of my position and all positions that I may hereafter hold. And I serve at the pleasure of my colleagues, and I will do it to the best of my ability.
And how long do you expect, Congressman, this will take to resolve all ethics complaints? Do you have a timeline?
Right. Our timeline is actually found in our rules and procedures, and we have 60 session days to dispose of any ethics complaint that will be filed before us.
How many session days? Sorry, you were choppy there a bit, Congressman.
60.
60
days.
session days. Oo. And is this under the Supreme Court's definition of session days? Because that has been quite the topic of debates recently. How do we define session days pagdating po sa Ethics Committee?
Well, of course, whenever Congress is in session, so yun lamang po ang definition natin. Napakasimple. And I would like to ensure to our countrymen na aaksyonan po natin lahat ng ethics complaint na isasampa sa ating committee.
And just as my last question, Congressman, because this is a time where public trust in institutions are quite low and quite fragile, how will this affect the image of the House of Representatives? And what assurances can you give the public that your probe will be all about upholding ethical standards and not about politics?
You know, I actually agree with a lot of my colleagues and our countrymen. The bigger issue remains holding accountable those who must be held accountable in the flood control scandal. However, wag na nating dagdagan ang problema ng ating bansa sa pamamagitan ng pagbe-behave ng hindi sang-ayon sa ating rules and standards that are expected of public officials. And at the same time, kung nagkaroon po tayo ng kasamahan sa Kongreso na nagkaroon ng allegation or complaint, whether it's an ethics case or a criminal case, they should show up. Kasi fighting for truth, it does not stop. You must show up when allegations are thrown against you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. That was House Committee on Ethics and Privileges Chairman Representative JC Abalos.
Thank you.
Don't go away. We still have more matters to discuss right after this break. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. Ombudsman Boying Remulla says he has asked the camp of fugitive Zaldico to return money allegedly taken from flood control projects to prove good faith. The request, Remulla said, was relayed through intermediaries, reportedly a group of priests sent by Co. He clarified that no deal was offered but said he is open to talks if the former lawmaker shows sincerity. Co is facing plunder, malversation, and other charges linked to the flood control scam. And Remulla said restitution may affect sentencing depending on the information Co provides, but stressed that state witness status is a separate issue.
Basta restitution, pag-usapan kagad. Kasi kung talagang willing kayo, then magsauli kayo. That's always part of the proposition. Kasi kung iintayin mo na ang korte ang magsasabi kung magkano isasauli, baka 20 taon na hindi pa tapos yan. Sabi ko naman sa kanila, dapat yan ang una nating isama sa usapan. Ano yan? Makikipag-usap ka, wala kang kasalanan, tapos wala kang bibigay, wala kang isasauli. Anong pag-uusapan natin?
Now in other news, people on the autism spectrum require extra care and vigilance to ensure their safety. And this inspired a father from Benguet to develop a comprehensive database designed to quickly locate children with autism should they ever go missing. Mobile journalist Denise Valdesancho has that story.
Hindi biro ang mawala ng anak. Danas daw yan ng isang ama mula Benguet. At ang solusyon niya, isang simpleng database.
2 anak ni Dean Cuanzo ang under the spectrum o may autism. May mga pagkakataon daw na parehong nawala ang mga bata. Mabuti na lang at agad silang nahahanap.
Ang ginawa nila, pinicturean nila yung anak ko and then pinost nila dun sa Facebook page ng police. And then syempre, na-share hanggang nakarating sa akin na nandun daw yung anak ko.
Hindi raw isolated kay Dean ang ganitong kaso. Sa kanilang lugar sa La Trinidad, Benguet, may ilang magulang ang nababahala dahil naranasan din nilang mawala ng anak na may autism.
Eventually, nung nag-research ako, ang dami ng ganong cases na pag may nawawalang mga bata, ang nangyayari is pinupost na sa Facebook and then looking for the parents of this kid, ganon. Kasi nga naman, mas gusto nila na pag kunyari nawala yung anak nila, ang unang tatawagan yung parent, hindi yung ipopost ka agad sa Facebook.
Founder si Dean ng Awesome North na layong magpakalat ng autism awareness. Kaya sa pag-asang makatulong, gumawa si Dean ng simpleng database program. Inilalagay rito ang pangalan at iba pang impormasyon ng bata, maging ang mga pinakamalapit na bodies of water.
Pero yun yung nagpapatunay talaga na kailangan bawat parent na may anak na may autism, kailangan alam niya kung saan yung mga closest bodies of water na malapit sa bahay nila. Kahit yung maliliit, kahit kanal, kahit stream. Ganun. Kasi we will never know pagdating dun sa tinong bata. So yun.
Hindi lang din daw kids under the spectrum ang pwedeng i-register sa database. Pwede maging iba pang batang may kapansanan. Ang next step niya, maipasa ang database sa local police station nila sa La Trinidad.
Pagdating dito sa program natin, dito sa ginagawa nating database registration, please do help and support us. Tulong para sa pangangalaga at security ng ating mga anak na tinatawag nilang under sa disability, okay, o yung mga children with disabilities.
Ngayong Autism Consciousness Month, isa lang ang mensahe ng mga magulang na katulad ni Dina na deserve ng bawat bata ang safe communities na aalagaan sila. Mga kapatid, Mobile Journal Denise Valdesancho po hatid ang mukha ng balita.
A Filipino-American activist, Chantal Anicoche, left the Philippines for the United States on Friday, January 30, after reuniting with her mother. Anicoche had been found on January 8 in Occidental Mindoro after being left behind by retreating New People's Army members and was treated at a military hospital. U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen expressed relief over her return and said Anicoche and her family have requested privacy. The National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflicts said her departure was carried out under a lawful order to leave issued by the Bureau of Immigration. Now, have you noticed the growing number of bamboo plants across Manila? Well, officials say they were planted to help prevent flooding by stabilizing soil and absorbing excess water. However, some residents are skeptical, fearing that fallen leaves and debris might actually clog the city's drainage systems. Mobile journalist Fatima Baduria has that story.
Subok na ang mga puno pangontra sa baha. Kaya naman ang lungsod ng Maynila, nagtanim ng mga kawayan para sa kanilang flood control. Malabambo wall ang makikita ngayon sa Roas Boulevard. Meron din sa Padre Burgos Avenue sa Maynila. Itinanim daw ito ng Manila Local Government para makatulong na maiwasan ang pagbaha.
Kasi itong bamboo, di ba, malakas sumipsip ng tubig pagka umuulan. So may program si Mayor na 100,000 bamboos ay tatanim namin dito.
Bonus din daw na aesthetic ang mga ito. Nasa 8 to 10 feet ang taas ng mga Japanese bamboo na kanilang itinanim. Hindi raw ito masyadong lumalaki. Galing Bulacan ang supplier at nasa 25 million pesos ang pondo ng Manila LGU para sa proyekto. Pero komento ng ilan sa social media, baka raw magdulot lang ito ng kalat sa kalsada. Sabi naman ng eksperto,
kalat ito dahil yung dahon niya madaling mag-mature, nahuhulog. So, they need seepers. Pero madali lang naman din minsan ito.
So, once a day nandun, nililinis lang yung area, nakatulong ko yung Parks Development Office. Ititrim mo siya para maganda yung pantay sa gilid, sa ibabaw. Maganda siyang tingnan.
Ayon sa forester, maraming magandang dulot ang kawayan. Hindi lang iwas baha, iwas soil erosion at nakakatulong din para malinis ang hangin.
Pinaka-importante na gamit ng kawayan is for the environment. So aside from the carbon dioxide sequestration, nagbibigay ng oxygen sa atin. Any open areas ng Manila pwedeng tamnan ng kawayan.
Iba-iba ang pwedeng solusyon para sa flood control at hindi lahat kailangan ng malaking budget. Kayang-kaya rin pala yan ng kawayan. Mga kapatid, Mobile Journal Fatima Baduria po hatid ang mukha ng balita.
Now, neglected bike lanes in Marikina are getting a new lease on life. Enforcement is also tabbing down with motorists caught parking in the lanes facing immediate fines. Mobile journalist Ivan Tarinque has that story.
Kilalang bike-friendly ang Marikina at ang bike lane sa lungsod hindi lang palamuti kundi talagang napapakinabangan dahil ipinaglalaban. Madalas sa problema ng mga siklista ang kakulangan ng maayos na daan para sa kanila. Kahit nga sa Marikina na kilalang bike-friendly city, problema rin ang sasakyang iligal na nakaparada sa bike lanes. Aminado ang Bikeways Office ng lungsod. Talagang maraming pasaway at hindi basta nauubos sa mga ito. Kaya ang opisina na mismo ang nagbabala sa mga sumusuway.
Kinakausap, binibigyan ng ticket para po ma-inform sila na iyon po ay hindi po pwedeng magkaroon ng blockage dahil iyon po ay bike lane.
Isa sa mga naikinabang sa bike lane sa Marikina ay ang magtataho na si Tatay Servillano. Para sa kanya, malaking bagay ang may dedicated na ruta. Mas ligtas, mas maayos, at iwas sa aksidente.
Ay, mahirap doon. Sa tabi ng kalsada kasi, minsan may di mo maintindihan. Bigla na lang lulusot sa tabi mo di ba?
Sa ngayon, binubuhay rin sa lungsod ang mga napabayaang bike lanes, kabilang ang Goodrich Tunnel. Inaayos na ito para muling magamit ng mga nagbabike. Kasama rin sa plano ang bike education programs, dagdag na bike stations at parking, at mga proyektong tututok sa pamilya at komunidad.
Sa pamamagitan po ng mga educating the parents and the student, ay mapapil natin sa kanila na magiging safe sila.
Ang bike lane ay hindi lang paradahan. Daanan ito ng mga siklista na dapat igalang. Mga kapatid, Mobile Journal Ivan Tarinque po hatid ang mukha ng balita.
And now, shifting gears to sports, Alex Ayala capped a strong start to 2026 by soaring to a new career-high world ranking of number 45 in the latest WTA rankings. The 20-year-old Filipina tennis star jumped 4 spots after an impressive January, highlighted by a quarterfinal finish at the Philippine Women's Open, the country's first ever WTA 125 event. Ayala fell to eventual champion Camila Osorio of Colombia, but still pocketed valuable points to fuel her continued rise in the global standings. Ayala now sets her sights on the Abu Dhabi Open. And that wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters this Tuesday. We hope we've given you just the right start to your morning. Let's make the day matter. I'm Pauline Verzosa. Kapatid, we are One News, all sides, all the time.